I never thought I'd hear my own mother say those words to me. Leave your keys. You're not welcome here anymore. It wasn't screamed. It wasn't said through tears or rage. It was cold, crisp, like a line rehearsed too many times in her head, finally delivered with terrifying clarity. I stood there, my duffel bag in one hand, my laptop clutched in the other, soaked from the downpour outside, shoes squelching against the marble floor of our suburban foyer. She didn't even blink. My father just leaned against the staircase railing, arms crossed like a judge who'd already handed down a sentence. No appeal. You made your choice, he added. You chose failure. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because if I didn't, the lump in my throat would win. I chose failure? I had chosen to leave my 6-figure job at Sloan West Analytics, a place where I was the only woman on the machine learning team, to build a tool that I truly believed could help millions. But to them, machine learning was still just a buzzword on the news. You're 28, Abigail, my father said again. You had your chance. This isn't your playground anymore. Abigail. Only my father calls me that when he's cutting me down. I said nothing. Just nodded, reached into my coat pocket and placed the house keys gently on the side table by the door, the same place I'd leave them every day coming home from school as a kid. I turned the knob. As I stepped out into the rain, I heard the lock click behind me. You'd think that moment would be the worst part of this story. But actually, it was weirdly freeing. I walked. I don't know how long, maybe an hour, maybe 3. The rain blurred everything, the lights, my breath, the sidewalk. Eventually I ended up outside Taylor's apartment. She opened the door in an oversized sweatshirt and bunny slippers and didn't ask questions. Just handed me a towel and pointed to the couch. We'd been best friends since freshman year at MIT. She knew I was working on something big. She also knew I hadn't told a soul in my family, because every time I brought up my side project, my father would roll his eyes and my mother would change the subject. And Ethan, my golden boy little brother, would smirk and say, "That's cute, Abby." Cute, like I was doing arts and crafts in the basement. But Pillarscope wasn't cute. It was powerful. It was a real-time property intelligence platform that could analyze regional mortgage trends, zoning risk, and debt exposure to flag potentially collapsing markets before anyone else saw it coming. I'd started building it after watching too many friends lose homes in the 2021 crash. It was my way of creating a financial early warning system. But that night, as I lay curled on Taylor's couch, hair still damp and heart cracked open, all I could think was, maybe they're right. Maybe I am just a dropout who thinks she's smarter than she is. At 3:12 a.m., I opened my laptop and stared at my codebase. Empty, unloved, like me. I typed a single line into my dev journal. Note to self, you have no one to impress anymore. Make it count. Morning came, Taylor made coffee. I borrowed her brother's old hoodie and some sweats. Want me to go yell at them? She asked, setting the mug in front of me. I gave her a smile. A weak one, but real. Nah, I think they already said everything they needed to. She nodded. Then, with her usual no-nonsense tone, said, So what now? I stared into the mug, the bitter steam fogging my glasses. Then I answered the only way I knew how. I build this, I finish Pillarscope, and I prove I'm not the mistake they think I am. She held up her mug. To spite-fueled success. I clinked mine against hers, to never needing their keys again. The couch was lumpy. The springs squeaked every time I shifted. Taylor's cat, Scone, claimed it as her territory and growled if I took up more than half, and yet somehow that sofa felt more like home than the house I'd grown up in ever had. Each morning, I folded the blanket, fed the cat, and walked 5 blocks to Mocha Halo, an overpriced coffee shop with lo-fi music and plants that died every 3 days. They paid minimum wage, plus tips, and let me eat as many stale croissants as I wanted. I took the opening shift, 6 a.m. sharp, because it meant I could spend the rest of the day doing what actually mattered, building Pillarscope. Taylor worked remote for a fintech startup and sat across from me most afternoons. She didn't say much, just the occasional, "Your loop's stuck," or "You missed a semicolon again." But her silence was steadying. Unlike my family, she never demanded that I explain why I believed in this idea. She just helped me keep it alive. By the end of the first month I had a working alpha. It was ugly, clunky, but it worked. I fed it the 10-year historical data of mortgage foreclosures across 3 states, and it began to spit out predictive trends. It wasn't just using numbers, it was reading patterns. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew this thing could save people. But building it in theory was one thing. Getting someone to care? Another story. I cold emailed 72 real estate firms, got 2 replies. One told me politely to never contact them again. The other said, "Interesting concept, but you're not credible." Not credible. I had patents, I had awards, I had a resume longer than Ethan's entire college thesis. But because I didn't have a tie, a title, or a trust fund, I wasn't credible? I saved that email in a folder I named Gaslight Archives. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, while updating the user interface with painfully basic charts, an email popped up from a name I didn't recognize. Subject: Pillar Scope SeedSpark Incubator Interest. Body: Abigail, I came across a GitHub repo linked through a forum thread and was intrigued by your predictive modeling approach. We'd like to talk about a possible accelerator invite. Are you available for a quick call tomorrow? V. Dawson, Program Director. I froze. Read it again. Check the domain. Legit. I called Taylor in a whisper-shout panic. They found it. They found it. She barely looked up. Told you someone would. Did you clean up your repo like I said? Define clean. She rolled her eyes. Abby, please tell me you didn't push your deblug vomit.json file. I groaned. I think I did. Charming. Well, better hope they like raw authenticity. The call the next day was short. 15 minutes. V. Dawson was sharp, fast-talking, and said the word scalable 4 times. But the key moment was this. I'm not gonna lie, Abigail, we don't usually take single founders, but you've got edge, and this thing, if it does what you say, could shift risk modeling entirely. I tried to sound cool. Thanks. I've been working on it for a while. What's your current runway? About 2 weeks of rent and a half-eaten protein bar. She laughed. Good, that means you're hungry. Let's bring you in for demo day prep. When I hung up, I just stared at the screen. A part of me waited for it to vanish. A glitch. A cruel cosmic prank, but the email confirmation landed within seconds. I was in. Taylor brought over 2 tiny cupcakes with candles from the bodega. No champagne, she said, but these light up. I blew them out. Wished silently. Not for revenge, not even for recognition. Just for a real shot. But success didn't come clean. Week 2 of the accelerator, we had to present our 5-minute pitch. I was shaky. My slides were fine, my code demo solid. But then came the Q&A. One judge raised her hand. You said your algorithm can detect at-risk neighborhoods before official foreclosures begin. Doesn't that mean you could cause panic or manipulation of the market? It wasn't just a question. It was an accusation. I hesitated, then answered, yes, but I built it to protect, not provoke. What people do with information is a matter of ethics. I'd rather empower the public than let banks stay 1 step ahead. Afterward, Taylor pulled me aside. You know who she is, right? Vice president at a hedge fund, the kind of person who wants the public to stay blind. I didn't say anything. But that night, I opened my journal again. Note to self, they'll try to silence this, make it louder. You'd think getting into an accelerator would be the hard part. But no one warns you about what happens after they finally say yes. I was 2 weeks in, running on caffeine and half-spilled adrenaline. Every morning was a pitch. Every afternoon a feedback loop. Every evening a lecture about market size and burn rate and exit scenarios. I pretended to take notes like everyone else. But I wasn't there to learn how to sell. I was there to build something that couldn't be ignored. And somehow, it started working. After the second round of mentor reviews, they invited me to the proof of traction board. That meant I could demo PillarScope in front of actual firms, not just advisors and interns with clipboards. On demo day, I stood in a glass conference room, facing a semicircle of real estate brokers, mid-level execs, and angel investors who smelled like leather and old money. I took a breath. Then I showed them the heat map. It was a visualizer of default likelihood, color-coded by zip code. When I ran a scenario for Southern Florida, based on recent interest rate hikes and commercial real estate trends, the entire coastline turned orange. One of the brokers leaned forward. You're saying we could have seen the 2021 collapse coming? Taylor brought over 2 tiny cupcakes with candles from the bodega. No champagne, she said, but these light up. I blew them out, wished silently, not for revenge, not even for recognition. just for a real shot. But success didn't come clean. Week 2 of the accelerator, we had to present our 5-minute pitch. I was shaky. My slides were fine, my code demo solid, but then came the Q&A. One judge raised her hand. You said your algorithm can detect at-risk neighborhoods before official foreclosures begin. Doesn't that mean you could cause panic or manipulation of the market? It wasn't just a question, it was an accusation. I hesitated, then answered, yes, but I built it to protect, not provoke. What people do with information is a matter of ethics. I'd rather empower the public than let banks stay one step ahead. Afterward, Taylor pulled me aside. You know who she is, right? Vice president at a hedge fund, the kind of person who wants the public to stay blunt. I didn't say anything. But that night I opened my journal again. Note to self, they'll try to silence this. Make it louder. You'd think getting into an accelerator would be the hard part. But no one warns you about what happens after they finally say yes. I was 2 weeks in, running on caffeine and half-spilled adrenaline. Every morning was a pitch. Every afternoon a feedback loop. Every evening a lecture about market size and burn rate and exit scenarios. I pretended to take notes like everyone else, but I wasn't there to learn how to sell. I was there to build something that couldn't be ignored. And somehow, it started working. After the second round of mentor reviews, they invited me to the proof of traction board. That meant I could demo PillarScope in front of actual firms, not just advisors and interns with clipboards. On demo day, I stood in a glass conference room, facing a semicircle of real estate brokers, mid-level execs, and angel investors who smelled like leather and old money. I took a breath. Then I showed them the heat map. It was a visualizer of default likelihood, color-coded by zip code. When I ran a scenario for Southern Florida, based on recent interest rate hikes and commercial real estate trends, the entire coastline turned orange. One of the brokers leaned forward. You're saying we could have seen the 2021 collapse coming? Not only seen it, I replied, clicking to the next slide, but shifted your portfolios before the banks moved. Dead silence. Then murmurs. Someone whispered, game changer. Another asked if I was open to licensing the tool. That night I got an email from a small brokerage firm in Austin. They wanted to run a pilot using PillarScope to manage their mid-tier listings. It wasn't millions, but it was something real. Taylor and I celebrated with takeout sushi and root beer. She toasted with her chopsticks. To first blood. To many more, I said, clinking mine against hers. The next day, I woke up to 4 missed calls from a number I hadn't seen in 2 years. The contact ID still read, Sebastian? Ugh. Sebastian had been my co-founder. Technically. Back in college, we had worked on an early version of a real estate trend analyzer as part of a capstone project. I did the modeling, he did the pitching. When it came time to publish, he submitted the work under his name alone. I hadn't spoken to him since. He finally texted, hey, saw PillarScope trending. Looks like you built it out. Crazy stuff. Wanna talk? I've got some connections. Could help you scale. No hard feelings, right? Right, I didn't reply. A day later, he posted a thinly veiled tweet. Funny how some people innovate by rebuilding what already existed in 2019. I stared at it for 5 full minutes. Then I did what I always did when I wanted to scream. I opened my dev terminal. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I rewrote my architecture documentation, cleaned up the pipeline, added modular privacy layers, things only someone truly familiar with the code could verify. When I was done, I published the update with a full changelog. Then I did something bold. I tweeted the original capstone repo with my name on every commit, dated and verified. I didn't tag Sebastian. Didn't need to. The next day, I had 50 DMs from developers asking to contribute. A few brokers requested API access. One VC asked if I was open to a seed round. And Sebastian? He went quiet. But not everyone loved what I was doing. During the next panel, a corporate mentor pulled me aside. Off the record, she said, a few banks are asking about your intentions. They're worried your tool could be used to short the housing market. I blinked. You mean, used against the market? She gave a thin smile. Let's just say some of them don't appreciate unregulated transparency. I thanked her, then left early. That night, I didn't work on code. I sat on Taylor's roof with a blanket and a hot cocoa and stared at the city skyline. Everything I'd built, every sleepless night, every bug fix, every stolen moment of faith, was finally being seen. but being seen came with a price. I could feel the vultures circling. The next morning, Taylor handed me a printed email from the accelerator inbox. "This came in for you," she said. "I think you should read it out loud." I frowned and scanned the subject line, Pillar Scope, Potential Licensing Deal Discussion. I read the first line, then the second, then I stopped breathing. It was from someone at Goldwyn State Mortgage Corp., one of the largest lending institutions in the country, and the company that had just filed to foreclose on my parents' house. I didn't recognize the voice at first. "Hi, is this Abigail Mitchell?" The name was too formal, too cold. No one called me that unless it was bad news, or family. I was already bracing for it. "This is Melissa from Goldwyn State Mortgage Corporation. We're reaching out in regard to a property under review, specifically 1438 Braywood Drive." My blood turned to ice. That was my parents' address. "Yes," I said slowly, my voice cautious. "There's a pending foreclosure on the property. Sir, we have reason to believe you may have relevant experience that could inform our valuation model. Are you available for consultation?" I blinked. Once. Twice. My heart thudded behind my ribs like it was trying to escape. This wasn't a courtesy call, it was a tactical one. They wanted my expertise, but they had no idea who they were talking to. The same person who'd once been told she had no business sense. The same daughter they'd pushed out with a duffel bag and wet shoes. They didn't even know I was the creator of Pillar Scope. After I hung up, I sat there in stunned silence. Taylor finally broke it. "What was that?" I turned to her, still half in disbelief. "They want me to consult on a property, and it's my parents' house." Her eyes widened. "Wait, your parents?" "Yep, and they don't know it's you behind the platform?" "Nope." She leaned back on the couch, crossed her arms and grinned. "Oh my God, you have the upper hand." I didn't smile. Because in that moment something sharp and complicated twisted in my chest. This wasn't satisfying. This wasn't the revenge fantasy I used to daydream about on that lumpy couch. It just hurt. They were in trouble, and they were about to unknowingly ask their exiled daughter to help them. That night I barely slept. I pulled up Pillar Scope's back end and ran a full analysis on 1438 Braywood Drive. My algorithm highlighted red flags in seconds. Variable mortgage, 3 deferred payments, neighborhood depreciation, zoning changes that were killing resale value. Pillar Scope predicted a 74% foreclosure risk within 6 months. The thing was, I could help them, not just through the tech. I knew how the system worked, how to negotiate a loan modification, how to flag community investment metrics that would raise their appraisal score. I could fix this. But should I? That question kept me up until sunrise. The next morning, I walked into the Goldwyn State building like I belonged there. And weirdly, I did. I wore a navy blazer, my hair up, laptop in hand, a name badge printed with A. Mitchell, external consultant, dangled from my neck. No one asked where I came from. They just saw credentials, clean slides, and keywords like predictive equity thresholds. The executive across from me had no idea he was talking to a girl who used to cry in that very house over math homework. He clicked through the model I demoed and nodded approvingly. "We've been thinking about offloading this one to a hedge buyer, but maybe there's a way to restructure. Good work, Miss Mitchell." He didn't even ask how I got this good. They never do. 2 days later, the foreclosure was paused. And 3 days after that, my mother called me. The caller ID just said, "Mom." I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Abby?" Her voice was soft, unsure. "Yes?" We got a notice. The bank says someone advised a new risk assessment, that it bought us time. Was that you?" Silence. Then, "We didn't know what we were doing. The investment seemed safe. Your father thought." "I know," I said, not bitter, just tired. She cleared her throat. It saved us. We're grateful. Truly." And then the quietest pause. "We miss you." I stared at the ceiling, words flooding but none fitting. "I'm glad you're okay," I finally said. She tried to say more, but I couldn't. I mumbled something about another call and hung up. I sat still for a long time, staring at nothing. I had finally done it. I'd helped them, proved myself, saved the very house I was exiled from, but it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing in front of a locked door with a spare key you no longer wanted to use. The funny thing about power is how quiet it is when it finally shows up. No fireworks, no parade, just a subtle shift. Like walking into a room and realizing you're the one everyone's watching now. After the foreclosure was paused, I got another email from Goldwyn. This time, it wasn't from the mid-level account manager, it was from their director of portfolio risk. He wanted to talk licensing, specifically exclusive licensing. It was the kind of offer that could change the trajectory of a startup forever, and tie you to a financial giant for years. I didn't say yes. Not yet. Because something in me wasn't ready to give away the thing I built from a couch on heartbreak and caffeine. Instead, I asked for a meeting, and I brought my terms. The boardroom was bigger this time. Leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city I used to think would never have a place for someone like me. Taylor came as my advisor. She wore a blazer that didn't quite fit and carried a binder full of red flags. I handled the pitch. This, I said, clicking through the dashboard, isn't just a prediction engine. It's a warning system. It gives you 6 months to act before the market collapses. But more importantly, it gives everyday people a fighting chance. The director nodded. We've reviewed the model. Very robust. But the name, Pillar Scope, it's not exactly mainstream. Would you be open to rebranding? I smiled politely. No. He blinked. No. I leaned in. When you build something while sleeping on a couch and living off leftover soup, you earn the right to name it whatever you want. Taylor bit back a grin. Later that afternoon, while waiting for the elevator, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Abby? I turned. Ethan? My brother in a fitted suit and expensive shoes, looking every bit the polished product of a family who'd always favored polish over purpose. What are you doing? He asked. I shrugged. Meetings. With Goldwyn? He frowned. I thought you were doing some tech project or whatever. I raised an eyebrow. That tech project saved your house. His mouth opened, then closed. He hesitated. I didn't know. No, you didn't ask. He shifted awkwardly. Mom's been talking about you a lot lately. Yeah, said she wishes you'd come by. I nodded slowly. Maybe one day. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. He stayed out. Before the doors closed, I looked him in the eye. You know, Ethan, you used to call it cute. What? My work. You called it cute. He flushed. I was just being a jerk. I shrugged. You weren't wrong. It was cute, until it started buying houses. The doors shut. That evening, I got a message from a woman named Sarah McNeil. She ran a local housing nonprofit and had seen a clip of my pitch that someone posted online. She asked if Pillar Scope could be adapted to help identify neighborhoods at risk of gentrification, so they could intervene before families got priced out. I didn't even hesitate. Yes, I replied. Absolutely yes. Because this wasn't just about proving something anymore. It was about using what I built to protect people like the me who used to worry about rent, about being unwanted, about not belonging. The next morning, I turned down Goldwyn's exclusivity offer. Politely, professionally, firmly. And I proposed an open access model for nonprofits instead. They didn't like it, but they didn't walk away either, because now they needed me. That weekend I stopped by the old neighborhood. Not to visit, just to walk past. I watched a kid ride a bike down the sidewalk I used to trace with sidewalk chalk. I stood across the street from 1438 Braywood Drive and saw a new roof, fresh paint, a sign that someone still believed in second chances. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I had built something better than a seat at their table. I'd built my own. The invitation came in the form of a text. No frills, no emojis, just, we're having dinner Sunday, would love for you to come, Mom. I stared at it for a full minute before responding. Okay. Not because I was ready, but because I was tired of carrying this unspoken weight between us, tired of pretending I didn't care when part of me still did. Sunday came. I wore something simple. Clean lines, neutral tones. The kind of outfit that made me feel grounded, not performative. Taylor offered to come as moral support. I said no. This is a solo mission, I told her. Just text me if they try to gaslight you into washing the dishes after, she said, handing me a tiny keychain shaped like a sword. For protection. I tucked it into my purse and smiled. Thanks. I might need it. When I walked into the house, it was like stepping into a memory and watching it blink. Same furniture, same photos, same smell of lemon polish and something simmering on the stove, but everything felt smaller. Or maybe I had just grown. My mother appeared in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a towel. You look well, she said. Thanks. She stepped forward and hugged me. Awkward, brief, like hugging a stranger you used to love. My father was already seated at the dining table, flipping through a business section that he hastily folded when he saw me. "Abigail?" he said with a nod. "Glad you could make it." I sat down across from them. The table was set for 4. "Ethan's running late," Mom explained. Of course he was. Dinner started light, too light. Talk of weather, renovations, the neighbor's new dog. I answered politely but gave nothing extra. Then, halfway through the salmon, my mother put down her fork. "I know this doesn't fix anything," she said, "but thank you." I looked up. "For what?" "For helping us, with the house. Your father and I, we had no idea. We only found out through that advisor at Goldwyn, said the risk model used was something called pillar scope." Her voice broke. "I remembered that name. From your journals? From when you were still home?" I didn't respond. My father cleared his throat. "I've been reading about it," he said, tapping his glass. "Impressive system. You could have told us." I raised an eyebrow. "Would you have listened?" Silence. He set his glass down. "Probably not." Another pause. Then I said it. "I built it while sleeping on a couch, while making lattes for rent, while you two acted like I didn't exist." My mother opened her mouth. I held up a hand. "I'm not saying that to shame you. I'm saying it because it's true. I did what I had to. And maybe that exile was the best thing that ever happened to me." Ethan walked in at that moment, pausing at the doorway. "Did I miss the part where we pretend we were always supportive?" My dad shot him a look. "Ethan." "No, it's okay," I said. "Let him speak." Ethan shrugged. "Look, I was a jerk. I made jokes. I treated you like the weird older sister with tech dreams and a laptop nobody understood. But now, my classmates are quoting pillar scope in their case studies." He sat down and met my eyes. "You built something real. You deserve more than we gave you." It was the closest thing I'd ever get to an apology. I nodded. "I didn't come here for that. I just needed you to know that I didn't build this in spite of you. I built it because I had no choice. I had to believe in something when no one else did." The table went quiet again. This time, the silence felt different. Not hollow, not hostile, just full. As I stood to leave, my mom followed me to the door. "We still have your room," she said softly. "It's exactly the same." I looked at her and smiled gently. "I'm not." On the drive home, I stopped at a red light and checked my phone. A notification buzzed from a news alert. "Upstart platform Pillar Scope disrupts housing risk market. Founder Abigail Mitchell named in Forbes 30 under 30 list." I didn't screenshot it, didn't even share it. Because the best part was knowing I didn't need their applause anymore. I'd already given it to myself. I moved into my new place on a Wednesday. It was a modest bungalow just on the edge of the city, nothing like the polished colonial I grew up in, but it had character. Exposed beams, a creaky porch swing, a lemon tree that dropped more fruit than I knew what to do with. As I unpacked, I found the old keychain Taylor gave me, the tiny sword. I smiled, clipped it to my new house keys, and dropped them in the bowl by the door. My door. My lock. My rules. There's something surreal about walking into a space that's entirely yours, not just because you paid for it, but because you earned it. Every light switch, every shelf, every squeaky floorboard was a quiet victory. And in the center of the living room, on the wall above my standing desk, I framed the original sketch of Pillar Scope. It was torn notebook paper, covered in red ink and coffee stains. The prototype that I had doodled at 2:30 a.m. The night after my parents kicked me out. The same night I almost gave up. But I didn't, because something in me knew that the key I needed wasn't made of metal. It was persistence. A week after the dinner, I got an envelope in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single photo, me, age 7, sitting cross-legged in the front yard of the old house holding a cardboard for sale sign I'd drawn in crayon. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, "You were always meant to see what others couldn't." No apology, no signature, just that. And honestly, it was enough, because I wasn't angry anymore. There's this myth that healing requires closure, that someone has to admit they were wrong, say they're sorry, give you the words you've waited your whole life to hear. But sometimes healing comes when you stop waiting, when you realize you've built something stronger than their approval. Yourself. That summer, I launched Pillar Scope's nonprofit integration. We partnered with housing counselors, tenant advocacy groups, and community lenders. Instead of selling fear, we offered foresight. We made data accessible, transparent, empowering. And the weirdest part? The more I gave it away, the more the world gave back. An investor from a mission-driven fund called me visionary. A single mom in Detroit sent a handwritten thank you note after using Pillarscope to renegotiate her lease. A kid from my old high school emailed to say he was inspired to study data science because of that thing you built. And me? I finally exhaled. One quiet evening I sat on the porch swing with Taylor, sipping iced tea and watching the sun fall behind the lemon tree. You ever think about what would have happened if you never left? She asked. I laughed. Yeah, I probably would have spent the rest of my life trying to earn their approval. And now, I don't need it. She clinked her glass against mine. To earning your own. To keys that no one can take from you, I replied. Later that night, I posted something simple on my feed. Once my parents told me to leave my keys, so I built a house no one could lock me out of. If you're in that place right now, rejected, underestimated, doubted, keep building. Someday the very people who pushed you out will ask how you did it, and you'll have the strength to say, I didn't break in. I built my own door. Final CTA. Trian Kamhung, Fakilgai Tutnian. If you've ever been told you didn't belong, only to realize you never needed permission in the first place, share your story below. Let's fill this world with people who build doors for others, not just for themselves. And if this story hit home, hit like, hit follow, and keep going. Your key is already in your hand.